Have you ever woken up from a dream so vivid that it lingered in your mind all day? A dream that felt less like a trick of the subconscious and more like a whisper from something beyond? That's exactly what happened to Daniel Carter, a man who never considered himself particularly religious. Daniel was logical, practical, a numbers guy, a corporate strategist who lived by data and probability, not faith. Dreams were just the brain's way of organizing thoughts. Or so he believed, until one fateful night when a vision came to him, so intense, so haunting, that it shook the very foundation of his life. In his dream, he stood at the edge of a vast, endless ocean. The sky above was deep violet, swirling with golden clouds that pulsed like living things. A massive bridge stretched across the water, its structure glowing faintly, as if made of pure light. He felt a strange pull toward it, as though his very soul was being summoned. But before he could step forward, a voice called his name, deep, resonant, filled with both authority and warmth. Turning, he saw a cloaked figure standing on the shoreline, though the figure's face remained hidden beneath the hood. Its presence exuded an overwhelming sense of peace. In its outstretched hands was a golden lantern, flickering with an otherworldly fire. "You seek answers," the figure said, "but are you ready for the truth?" Before Daniel could respond, the ocean suddenly turned violent. Waves crashed against the shore, and from the depths, something dark and monstrous began to rise. The bridge ahead trembled, its radiant light dimming as shadowy tendrils slithered across its surface. A choice lay before him: step onto the bridge and face the unknown, or turn back and wake up in the world he knew. The moment he lifted his foot to decide, he awoke, gasping, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding like a drum. This was no ordinary dream. It was a call. But to what, and why now? Daniel sat up in bed, the remnants of his dream still swirling in his mind. His sheets were damp with sweat, and his pulse was erratic. He had never experienced anything like this before. It wasn't just a random dream, it felt like something more. Something profound, unable to shake the images. He reached for his phone and instinctively searched for dream interpretations. Article after article spoke of symbols, the ocean representing the subconscious, the bridge symbolizing transition, and the cloaked figure often linked to divine guidance. But none of these explanations satisfied the deep, gnawing sensation in his chest. This was personal, this was different. The next day, at work, Daniel found himself distracted, as he sat in a boardroom meeting, listening to executives drone on about quarterly earnings. His mind drifted back to the bridge of light, the rising shadows, the lantern burning in the figure's hands. "You seek answers, but are you ready for the truth?" The words haunted him. By evening, he could no longer ignore the pull in his heart. He needed guidance, but from whom? He had never been particularly religious, and he couldn't exactly walk into a church and tell a pastor he had a dream about a glowing bridge and a mysterious figure offering him a lantern. Instead, he turned to the one person in his life who had always spoken of God's messages through dreams, his estranged uncle, Thomas. Thomas was the family outcast, the one who had left his successful corporate job years ago to become a traveling missionary. At family gatherings, everyone dismissed him as the crazy preacher. Daniel had barely spoken to him in years, but now, he was the only person Daniel could think of. That night, he hesitated before dialing the number saved in his contacts. Would Thomas even pick up? The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Daniel? Hey, Uncle Thomas, I know it's been a while, but I need to talk to you about something." A pause, then, a warm chuckle. "I was wondering when you'd call." Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" "Come see me," Thomas said. "We have much to discuss." The revelation 2 days later. Daniel found himself driving down a rural highway, past fields of golden wheat and stretches of empty road. His GPS directed him to a small, modest cabin surrounded by towering oak trees. As he pulled into the gravel driveway, Thomas stepped onto the porch, waiting as if he had known Daniel would arrive at this very moment. His uncle looked older than Daniel remembered, his once dark hair streaked with silver, his face weathered but peaceful. "Come inside, nephew," Thomas said, leading him into the cozy cabin. The scent of burning wood and old books filled the space. Daniel wasted no time. "Uncle Thomas, I had this dream. It was, I don't even know how to explain it. But it felt real, like it meant something. And I think I need your help understanding it." Thomas nodded, motioning for Daniel to sit. Tell me everything." As Daniel recounted the dream, the endless ocean, the glowing bridge, the cloaked figure, the rising shadows, Thomas listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Daniel finished, silence stretched between them. Then, Thomas let out a slow breath. This wasn't just a dream, Daniel. It was a calling. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. A calling for what? Thomas leaned forward, his eyes filled with something Daniel couldn't quite place: certainty, perhaps even urgency. The ocean represents the vastness of human understanding, the unknown. The bridge is the path of divine truth. The cloaked figure? A messenger, guiding you toward revelation. But the shadows, his voice darkened, they are deception, temptation, the forces that seek to keep you from crossing into truth. Daniel's chest tightened. So, what am I supposed to do? Thomas studied him for a long moment. That depends. Are you ready to walk across the bridge? To seek the truth, no matter where it leads? Daniel swallowed hard. He had spent his life chasing stability, success, things he could see and measure. But now, he stood at a crossroads, just like in his dream. And he had to decide which path to take. The crossroads of truth. Daniel stared at his uncle, his mind racing. This wasn't what he had expected. He had come looking for a simple answer, a straightforward interpretation of his dream. Instead, Thomas was telling him that his vision was more than just a message, it was a calling. A calling to what? Daniel asked again, his voice barely above a whisper. Thomas smiled knowingly. To seek the truth. The words sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. He had spent his life believing that truth was relative, that everyone had their own version of it. But the dream had felt absolute, undeniable. There was something waiting for him on the other side of that bridge. But was he ready to cross it? Thomas stood and walked over to a wooden bookshelf that stretched across the cabin's back wall. He ran his fingers along the spines before selecting a worn leather-bound book. You're not the first to receive dreams like this, Daniel. Throughout history, God has spoken through dreams, guiding people toward a greater understanding of their purpose. Joseph, Daniel, even Pharaoh, all were given visions that revealed something beyond human comprehension. Daniel took the book, flipping through its fragile pages. The words were unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. Stories of kings interpreting strange symbols, prophets receiving divine instructions, ordinary men being called to do extraordinary things. It's overwhelming, isn't it? Thomas asked, pouring tea into 2 small clay cups. To realize that your life is part of something bigger than yourself. Daniel nodded slowly. Yeah, it is. Thomas handed him a cup. Then let's begin. The journey into the unknown. The next few weeks were unlike anything Daniel had ever experienced. He stayed in Thomas's cabin, reading scripture, studying ancient dream interpretations, and meditating on the symbols in his vision. Each night, he would dream again, different variations of the same message. Sometimes, the bridge was crumbling beneath his feet. Other times, the cloaked figure would reveal glimpses of what lay beyond. But always, the shadows loomed behind him, whispering doubts into his mind. You're wasting your time. This isn't real. There's nothing for you on the other side. One evening, as Daniel sat by the fire, Thomas handed him an old journal. This belonged to a man I met many years ago. He, too, received dreams like yours. He spent his life chasing their meaning, searching for the truth. Daniel opened the journal, his eyes scanning the pages filled with intricate sketches and handwritten notes. Symbols of bridges, lanterns, figures draped in white robes. One passage caught his attention. The truth is not given, it is sought. To walk the path of wisdom, one must be willing to leave behind the comfort of the known. Daniel closed the book, a knot forming in his stomach. Uncle Thomas, he said hesitantly, what if I'm not ready? Thomas smiled gently. No one ever is, but readiness isn't the point. Obedience is. The test of faith. One night, Daniel had the most vivid dream yet. He stood at the bridge again, the ocean below roaring like a living beast. But this time, the cloaked figure held out 2 lanterns, one golden, shining with unnatural brilliance, the other simple and made of aged wood. Choose, the figure said. Daniel hesitated. The golden lantern was beautiful, almost hypnotic, but something about it felt wrong. His fingers hovered over the golden handle before a voice echoed through the darkness. Do not be deceived by what glitters in the night. Heart pounding, Daniel turned away from the golden lantern and reached for the wooden one. The moment his fingers wrapped around it, The bridge beneath him solidified. The ocean's roar quieting. The shadows screamed in fury. And then, he woke up. The revelation breathing heavily. Daniel sat up, his heart hammering in his chest. He knew now. The dream had been a test. The golden lantern represented deception, worldly success, temporary fulfillment, empty pursuits. But the wooden lantern? That was truth. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But it was real. He had his answer. Rushing to Thomas's study, he found his uncle already awake, as if he had been expecting him. "You've made your choice," Thomas said simply. Daniel nodded. "I'm ready to cross the bridge." The morning after his final dream, Daniel stood outside Thomas's cabin, staring at the mist-covered mountains in the distance. The weight in his chest had lifted, replaced by a quiet certainty. He had spent weeks wrestling with the meaning of his visions, struggling with doubt, but now he understood. This wasn't just about dreams. It wasn't about symbols or mysterious messages hidden in the night. It was about something far greater. It was about faith. Thomas stood beside him, his hands resting on his cane. "You've come far, Daniel." Daniel nodded. "But there's still more to learn." "Isn't there?" "There always is," Thomas said with a knowing smile. "But learning isn't the end goal. It's what you do with what you've learned that matters." Daniel looked down at his hands, remembering the feel of the wooden lantern in his dream. The choice had been simple yet profound. He had chosen truth, even when deception had been more enticing. He had chosen faith over fear. "But what now? What happens next?" he asked. Thomas chuckled. "That's the beauty of it. You tell me." Returning to the world, the journey home felt different this time. The city that had once felt so familiar now seemed foreign, as if he was seeing it through new eyes. The neon lights, the bustling streets, the endless rush, so much of it felt like the golden lantern now. Beautiful on the surface, but hollow underneath. He passed his old office building, remembering the long hours he had spent there, chasing numbers, wealth, success. Had he ever truly been happy? Or had he simply been walking toward a bridge that led nowhere? His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from an old colleague. "Big opportunity. Daniel, let's talk." A few weeks ago, he wouldn't have hesitated. But now he knew better. The true purpose. Daniel didn't reject the world, he embraced it in a new way. He didn't run from his past, but he no longer let it define him. Instead of chasing temporary fulfillment, he sought something deeper. He helped where he could, gave when he could, and most importantly, he listened. Because he knew now that he wasn't the only one having these dreams. One evening, as he sat at a quiet cafe, a woman approached his table. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. "I know this might sound strange, but I've been having dreams that feel too real." Daniel looked up, meeting her gaze. He saw the same uncertainty, the same longing he had once felt. He smiled. "Tell me about them." Because now, he understood his calling. His journey wasn't just about finding the truth. It was about helping others find theirs.